What it is, welcome back to another episode of the Urban Warrior Podcast, the place where we prepare for the unknown so we can live free and self-reliant in a world that's getting more unpredictable by the day. I'm Brody, aka B-Rock, and around here we keep it rough, rugged, raw, and real. If you're here, you see what that title is. 7 most overrated martial arts weapons for the apocalypse. Alright, check it out. When people imagine surviving the apocalypse, they almost always picture themselves as some kind of ultimate warrior. Maybe they're walking through a ruined city with a sword on their back. Maybe they're spinning nunchucks like Michelangelo from the Ninja Turtles. Maybe they're carrying ninja weapons like something out of an anime. And honestly, I get it. Martial arts weapons are actually pretty cool. They have history, style, and legend behind them. But there's a massive difference between what looks cool in a movie and what actually works if society were to collapse. Most traditional martial arts weapons were designed for very specific historical situations like battlefields, clothing, enemies, and their environment. And most importantly, different training expectations. Back then, warriors trained with these weapons for years, sometimes their entire lives. They practiced daily, they learned the techniques, they maintained the maintenance, the strategy, and the discipline that came with these tools. But if the shit were to hit the fan, nobody has the luxury for perfect conditions. You might be tired, hungry, injured, stressed, running on adrenaline, fighting in a tight space like a hallway, stairwell, parking garage, or a crowded street. And when survival gets messy, a lot of the legendary martial arts weapons suddenly become far less impressive than people think. So today I'll drop some knowledge on 7 martial arts weapons that are incredibly popular, but honestly overrated when it comes to surviving the end of the world. Number 1, the good old katana. The katana is probably the most romanticized weapon in the world because of samurai culture and Michonne from The Walking Dead, but it's also the most misunderstood. The katana has built almost a mythological reputation. Movies show it slicing through enemies like nut butter, animes portray it as the ultimate weapon of the lone warrior, and modern culture treats it as the gold standard for bladed combat. But the truth is a little bit more complicated. Historically speaking, the katana was used by samurai who trained for years to master swordsmanship. Their entire lifestyle revolved around warfare, discipline, and weapon training. In other words, they weren't weekend hobbyists swinging swords around. A katana also requires care and maintenance. The blade needs to stay sharp. It can chip if it hits a hard surface. It can bend if used improperly, and if it gets damaged badly enough, it's not something that can be fixed easily or at all in a survival situation. Then there's the environment. A sword like the katana works best when you have room to swing it. You need to be able to swing it wide, you need clear space, and you need proper footwork. But in a survival situation, environments aren't always open. You'll be dealing with narrow spaces like hallways, staircases, vehicles, doorways, and crowded streets. Try swinging a long blade in a tight quarters while someone rushes you and you quickly realize it's not going to look like some samurai movie. The katana is a weapon designed for trained warriors in structured combat, not random chaos in an urban environment. And here's a tip. Before relying on any weapon, ask yourself one honest question. Could I actually use this efficiently and effectively under extreme stress? Weapons that rely on years of specialized training often fall apart when used by people who haven't dedicated their lives to mastering them. Hate to break it to you. Number 2, the nunchuck. Nunchucks are famous because of Michelangelo and Bruce Lee. This is all their fault. They're one of the most misunderstood weapons in popular culture. A lot of people associate nunchucks with incredible martial arts skills, and this is true. Flashy spinning, lightning fast strikes, and crazy looking techniques. But what movies don't show you is how difficult they are to control. Even experienced martial artists spend a lot of time practicing just to avoid hitting themselves. The timing, the rhythm, the coordination all have to be perfectly lined up. Now imagine trying to do that while under extreme stress. Your adrenaline is pumping, your heart is going to be racing, your hands are going to be shaking, and you're about to poop yourself. Your fine motor control is going to be cooked. In that kind of situation, complicated weapon techniques become much harder to execute. Another issue is stopping power. Nunchucks can definitely hurt someone, but they don't always deliver the kind of immediate impact you need to stop someone who is on a mission to take you out. Which means if your technique isn't perfect, you may not get the results you're expecting, and survival situations rarely give you the luxury of using perfect technique. So here's a little tip. The more complicated a weapon is to use, the harder it becomes to rely on during high-stress situations. In chaotic environments, simple tools often outperform complicated ones that require precision, timing, and coordination. Number 3, throwing stars. Throwing stars are one of the most iconic ninja weapons, but their real-world effectiveness is way exaggerated. Movies make it look like ninjas could throw a star across a room and instantly drop an enemy, but historically speaking, shurikens were actually rarely used as a primary weapon. In many cases, they were used as a distraction tool rather than a killing tool. They could slow someone down, create confusion, or buy time to escape, but they weren't designed to end fights. There's also the obvious issue that once you throw it, it's gone. You can't retrieve it easily in the middle of a fight, and unless you were carrying a huge supply of them, your options became very limited after a few throws. Accuracy is another problem. Throwing blades accurately under pressure takes practice, and even then, hitting a moving target during a chaotic encounter is extremely difficult. And modern clothing changes the equation even more. Thick jackets, backpacks, and layered clothing can easily reduce the effectiveness of small throw blades. So here's a tip. Any weapon that disappears after one use should be considered a survival bust. Reliability matters more than novelty when safety is on the line. Number 4, the bow staff. The bow staff is one of the oldest martial arts weapons, but it's heavily dependent on space and movement. In martial arts training, the bow staff is incredibly versatile. It can strike, block, sweep, and control distance. In the right hands, it becomes a powerful tool, but the environment plays a huge role in how effective it can be. Traditional bow staff techniques assume you have enough space to maneuver, use wide arcs, full spins, and footwork that allow you to move freely. Urban survival environments don't always provide that luxury. You might find yourself moving through cramped spaces like apartment buildings, alleyways, staircases, and vehicles. Long weapons can become difficult to manage in environments where movement is restricted. There's also the issue of portability. Carrying around a 6-foot staff everywhere you go isn't exactly subtle either. It'll be hard to conceal and difficult to transport without drawing attention to yourself, and during unstable times, drawing attention is rarely a good idea. A weapon that works well in a training hall may behave differently in tight and unpredictable environments. The environment you're in can dramatically change how useful a weapon actually is, so remember that. Number 5, the sais. Sais are often sadly misunderstood as stabbing weapons, but historically they served a very different purpose. Sais were traditionally used for weapon control and defense. The prongs could trap or redirect bladed weapons, making them useful against sword attacks, but that design creates an illusion. The weapon relies heavily on technique, proper grip, positioning, and timing all matter when using sais effectively. Without that training, the weapon becomes much harder to use efficiently. Another factor is reach. Sais are pretty much a short weapon, which means you have to be very close to an opponent to use them efficiently. Close range combat is unpredictable and dangerous even for trained fighters, and unlike other weapons, using sais properly often involves holding one in each hand that can limit your ability to perform other survival tasks at the same time. So here's a little tip. Understanding the original purpose of a weapon helps reveal its strength and limitations. Not every historical weapon was designed for the kind of threats we imagine in modern survival scenarios. Number 6, the 3-section staff. The 3-section staff is one of the most complex weapons in martial arts. If you've ever seen the demonstration of the 3-section staff, it looks absolutely incredible. It has fast spins, flexible strikes, and fluid movements that almost look choreographic. But that's exactly the problem. The weapon is extremely difficult to control. It requires coordination, timing, and constant awareness of where each section is moving. Even experienced practitioners sometimes lose control of it during training, and I can attest to that. When that happens, the weapon can easily swing back and strike the user, which has happened to me dozens of times. Under calm training conditions, that's embarrassing. In a survival situation, it can become disastrous. Weapons that rely heavily on perfect timing and fluid motions become much harder to manage when adrenaline kicks in. And when the situation gets chaotic, complexity becomes a serious liability. So here's a little tip. If a weapon takes years to master, it may not be the best option for an unpredictable survival encounter. Complicated systems often break down when stress and chaos enter the equation. Number 7, the traditional bow. Bows are incredibly powerful tools, and I love me some archery, but their effectiveness is often misunderstood outside of the hunting context. Hollywood loves the image of the lone archer silently picking off enemies from a distance, but bows require significant training and constant practice to use efficiently, and I mean a lot of training. Being able to draw the bow correctly, aiming correctly, judging distance, and controlling your breathing all takes time to develop. There are also logistical considerations. Arrows can break, even carbon fiber ones. They can get lost, they require space to carry, and retrieving them isn't always possible. Then the speed of use is a total another factor. Each shot requires knocking an arrow, drawing the bow, aiming, and releasing. That process takes time, especially under pressure. And unlike some modern tools, bows depend heavily on constant technique and practice to remain effective. So here's a tip. Distant weapons often require ongoing training to maintain accuracy. Skills that degrade without practice may become unreliable during long-term survival scenarios. So, final thoughts. Martial arts weapons do carry incredible history. They represent tradition, culture, and centuries of human ingenuity. But surviving a collapse scenario isn't about recreating ancient battlefields. It's about adapting to chaotic environments where things rarely go according to plan. Weapons that look impressive in demonstrations don't always translate well into an unpredictable survival scenario. That doesn't mean these weapons are useless. Many of them are amazing within the martial arts system that they were designed for, but when people start planning for the end of the world, it's important to separate fantasy from practicality. Because when everything falls apart, survival favors people who think critically about the tools they rely on. And sometimes the most dangerous mistake you can make is assuming that something is effective just because it looks like it should be. So there you have it, the 7 most overrated martial arts weapons for the zombie apocalypse. Before you get out of here, give myself a shameless plug, and I'll say this. If you're serious about building your own income system and becoming more self-reliant, I can actually help you with that. I work with people who want to build their own websites, launch online businesses, and create income streams that give them more control over their future. You can learn more about working with me or schedule a strategy session through my website at urbanwarriorsurvival.com, because in a world that's becoming more unpredictable every day, self-reliance is just as smart as survival. Look, at the end of the day, nobody's coming to save you. Not the government, not the banks, not your job, and definitely not the system that benefits from you staying dependent upon it. Real freedom comes from building your own skills, your own income, and your own tribe. That's what this whole urban warrior survival movement is all about. Not fear, not panic, preparation. Because the more self-reliant you become, the less power broken systems have over your life. And that's exactly what we're building here. A tribe of people who refuse to live like domesticated house pets, waiting for permission to survive. So if this content helped you think a little differently, here's what I want you to do next. First, subscribe to my free Urban Warrior Survival e-magazine on my website. Every month I send out survival strategies, preparedness guides, and self-reliant tools that I don't always post publicly, because you know what these platforms would do with some of the stuff I'm going to have to say. And if you want to go deeper and support the mission, join Patreon, where I share exclusive content, behind-the-scenes strategies, and extra survival resources. And if you're serious about building community, join the Discord and connect with other warriors who are learning to become more self-reliant together. And if you want to come hang out live, talk survival strategies, preparedness strategies, and sometimes even break down things like the zombie apocalypse, alien invasions, and real-world natural disasters, come catch the live stream over on Twitch, because survival isn't meant to be done alone. We're building a tribe here. And if you're ready to stop depending on a failing system and start becoming the kind of person who can handle whatever the future throws at you, welcome to the pack. Let's bear some fangs. Until next time, this is Brody, aka B-Rock from Urban Warrior Survival, signing out. Peace.